Okay, I just wanted to point out a couple of pieces as we talk about the environmental itself. The process itself and the review itself is supposed to be process-driven, analytical, and interdisciplinary. Yes, as I can say that quickly after eating. Interdisciplinary, because there's so many pieces that actually go back into each other, such as floodplain, wetland, endangered species. They're all kind of integrated into each other. The other things that we wanted to talk about were supporting documents. We're seeing some really large documents come in, and you know what? We'll never say no to information. Please give us information. But what I will tell you is try to tell your story succinctly. If you can do it with a few maps or some other information, do so. If it needs a whole host of other things, then that's what it needs. But what we're looking for is source documentation that is credible, verifiable, and relevant to the analysis. So don't actually include your Christmas list or procurement that you did or anything else like that, because that's not part of environmental. We're looking at the environmental review itself. Some examples, just to kind of let you know what that is for credible documentation. Federal, state, local oversight agencies are recognized authoritative sources. For examples, EPA or State Department of Environment Quality. You may have some correspondence with them. Metropolitan Regional Planning Agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, State Historic Preservation Officer, the SHPO. We will definitely have something from them. Local county hazmat coordinator, biologist, botanist, qualified professional. These are some of the people that you may be contacting. For verifiable, we're talking about city or county land use plans or comprehensive plans. Don't make me put you two in timeout.
You're definitely going to have to deal with SHPO like it was.
Oh, well, that's a given. Like death and taxes. Floodplain maps, it's true, isn't it though? Floodplain maps, zoning maps, USGS topographical maps, historic registers, aerial photographs. Some of the other types that you may have, a field observation, including photographs. Photographs are key when you're doing a field observation. If you guys don't have a specific checklist for that, HUD actually has one, and I've got a copy of that. You're welcome to email me. I'd be glad to give you that field list. It'd be an easy adoption for you if that's what you want to utilize. Interviews, you must include the name, title, and date of whoever it was you interviewed for that specific piece. Printed material, letters, maps, reports, studies, analyses, web-based material, photographs. What you don't see on here, links. Don't you dare, no links. There's a reason for that. Links break. When we get audited, when you get audited, they come out to look at it, and it says, you know, that 404 code, or it's the link is broken or whatever. The auditor is not going to go, oh, that's okay. They're going to go, no, I don't have evidence. Remember, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen, okay? So if you're relying on something that you have on the web, if you've pulled up a map or something like that, you need to create a PDF of that. That needs to go into your file. You need a place and time. I literally was just talking to a former colleague 2 days ago about a review. She was doing a reevaluation. And part of that reevaluation, she was like, golly, it looks like we're going to have to go out for tribal again. Because we sat there and talked about it, and I said there was a time period there with HUD that they had no guidance on tribe, and we didn't actually do that as part of the historic review, believe it or not, okay? As the years came up and they had different people that came into office and they realized, hey, we're not actually fulfilling all that we're supposed to be doing with the 106, that became a part of it. Many of you have seen the result of that is that TDAT, that we can go and look up the tribes. They provide template letters for us and all this. Within that, when TDAT was developed, it started out with just a few tribes. And then it expanded, and there were a whole boatload of tribes. Then they went out with a consulting firm who contacted every tribe to ask if they wanted to participate. And then it exploded. So before, when you may have looked before, there were no tribes in that area. Suddenly there were now 2 tribes, and now maybe there's 6. So one of the things that we commented, which was great to have in our review record, was the screenshot of that TDAT report, because it will export and it'll give you an Excel sheet, and you save that. It shows all the tribes at that time that want to have a say in that piece, okay, that want to be contacted, that want to look at your projects. Since the project that was back from 2012 didn't have a listing in there, I couldn't say for sure that they contacted tribes. It could be at the time there were no tribes that showed on TDAT, and likely it probably was, but don't have a screenshot of it, so I can't say. So yeah, I advised her that they actually did have to go out and contact the tribes. They still need that chance to comment. They're doing kind of a reevaluation for a reconfiguring, shall we say, of the property that they're working on. But that's one of those pieces. That's why I say, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So even though I may know and I may be able to piece back because I remember I was around long enough to have actually seen that, it wasn't in writing. So you have to make sure that anything and everything that you're doing, you've kept a copy of. Screenshots are one of the best things that you can do. Maps, correspondence, photographs. Photographs are fantastic. Okay, proprietary material or special studies not generally accessible to the public shall be included in the ERR. So if you're doing a large swath of land that you are acquiring for multifamily, for example, you're going to have that Phase 1 ESA. So we're going to have that based on the ASTM standards, which include for all HUD projects, vapor. Regardless of whether the environmental professional sees a need to go into vapor or not, there still needs to be a statement in that Phase 1 ESA regarding vapor. The other piece of it is that we expect there to be a conclusion. Not all of them have conclusions. Recommendations maybe, but not conclusions. So we want a full conclusion and recommendations. You'll ask for that as part of that. Historic or archaeological surveys, if required, those need to be a part of the record as well. Noise analysis, soil and geologic studies. Those are very important. We've had projects before where we're dealing with some pipeline that's rolling through the ground, and on the Phase 1 ESA it says that that pipeline is okay as long as you don't disturb it. Meanwhile, the soil study says for it to be appropriate for us to build on, you're going to have to tamp it down. Who thinks that's disturbing that pipe? Who wants to blow up? So that's why those pieces are part of what we have to look at. Grading plans, because that goes into changing exactly what you're doing to that property. Asbestos surveys, wetland delineation. Okay, you start out with those maps from the wetland mapper that we have out there, but you may have to go in a little bit closer if you see signs that this property actually contains a wetland. Okay, we'll go into a little bit more of that later. Federal, state, or local environmental reviews. If there's any other environmental reviews that are associated with this, that's a part of it. So I know right now you're crying about all the stuff you're having to do for the review, and so we just wanted to show you that even though we're making you do so much, it's not as bad as it could be. So I'm sharing this. I hope the sound works. Believe it or not, in Iceland, they have to worry about elves, and I'm not even kidding about that. They delayed a highway project for something like 2 years because of elf habitat. Okay, so when you're not happy about endangered species, just know it has nothing to do with an invisible elf that may or may not live there. And possibly, oh, no sound. I'm sad.
Is this one of your slides? Yes.
Possibly.
No sound?
Ah, there's no sound. I'm so sad. I even brought a speaker in so it would do that.
Maybe we can put it in the, is it coming out of the laptop?
It's not.
Not even if you unplug
Oh, wait.
it?
See if he'll do it. Well, I don't want anything that messes up the laptop and the recording.
Is the hyperlink in the slides? Because I could bring mine up.
Oh, maybe so.
Yeah?
It is.
Let's see.
Well, you can see the picture here, but I just wanted you to hear, they're talking and they're very, very serious about this. They brought a lady out that was deciding that apparently this giant boulder was an elf church. I'm not even kidding. And they had to do a whole mitigation thing for the elf church and the road, and this gentleman, they're very respectful too. They're very respectful about it because they said, you know, you never know, it's delightful. This is the giant boulder they were talking about that apparently is a recognized elf church. So, you know, it goes to that belief system. And that also goes back into those things that are considered sacred. Probably many of you have seen a lot of the stuff that's going on in Hawaii with trying to build a telescope over there. That keeps making the news. That is tribal land that they're near, and there's sacred areas and vistas that they're looking at. So even though the elf thing sounds kind of crazy to me, it's something that's considered sacred and a part of what's their culture. So again, you know, when you're looking at these kind of things.
We're working on it.
They're working on it. Well, I'm going to escape out of this one. We'll keep going. Maybe I'll never escape out of it. Where is it?
Maybe can you ask the IT guy? Sorry, I don't know your name, but.
I don't know anything about that. I'm only dealing with the recording part.
Oh,
He doesn't deal with elves, so I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. So anyway, that's actually a shot off of the National Geographic. So there's the little groovy elf house or something, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so I just wanted to give you an example that it's not always as bad as you think it is. It could be worse. You could be doing that. Because I don't even know how you would delineate that. Alrighty, so we're going to talk about some tips and for some of the environmental laws and authorities for the post-disaster. There's things, as we've dug through the federal regulations, there's things that have come out and they've provided, and hopefully if you were able to get them boxed and drop down the slides, you've gotten copies of those various PAs and MOUs, and we've actually gotten a few determinations, and actually we have a hot off the press determination today regarding floodplain and floodway. Literally, I just found out about it at lunch, so we'll be sharing that with you as well, and we will drop that on box. So I'm going to start with other requirements. You keep hearing me talk about 58.6. These are those other requirements: airport hazards, coastal barrier, and National Flood Insurance Program. Very key and very important. Airport hazards falls under 24 CFR Part 51. So that's, again, that regulation I was talking about, 58, 51, 55. This is falling under 51. We've actually, thank you, Sam, come up with a little change in the determination on this. In the past, we've always used the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems mapping, which we still do, by the way. When you go out there and you're looking up and trying to figure out which one of those icons is appropriate for you. In previous incarnations, what we've said is it's every airport you see on an MPIAS map for airport hazards. For noise, it's only the primary airports, which are indicated by the red icons. However, in taking a deeper dive, thanks to Sam over here, so everybody wave at Sam and say thank you, we took a closer look at it. In the narrative, there actually are some non-primary airports that should be considered, and they're not broken out very well under the things that are non-primary. However, thanks to Appendix A, it shows you that none of those are contained in the state of Texas. So from this point forward, the only ones that we're looking at on those maps are anything that happens to be in those red icons. There's like a star and a triangle, I think. So any of those things that fall under, I think it's large hub, medium hub, small hub, non-hub. Those are the ones that you're going to be looking for airport hazards. Anything else beyond that, you don't have to worry about. Just for a quick heads up over here behind me, that's HUD guidance that we've provided behind us, as well as the airport hazard worksheet. Those are the links that go to that. National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, that is the link out to that map there. And military. Military is another piece of the airport hazard pie that we have to look at. This is actually the link that takes you out to the big national piece that will show you where those various airfields are located. One of the other ones that I cheat and use is from the Comptroller's office, because they actually have something on their economic development piece that it's a small map, but it shows you exactly which ones have like the various military bases in Texas. So it's kind of a quick shot to look at, because it also shows you which ones are active, because they're looking at what they have to do with them. For the HUD requirements for airport, I'm not even going to go into these. This goes into the sightings and everything else, into the basics of this, but the main part of this is that we're looking for those clear zones. Part of what we were talking about is it's applicable to define civil airports, and that's what that is. The civil airports have been redefined for us based on a little bit more research that we've had the chance to actually go into. And we actually got the hello back from HUD. They agree with us on that determination that we made, so that is official.
I have sound.
Oh, she has sound.
Do you want to do it?
Well, let me finish airports, and then you can show your elf. You want to hear the elf, you really do. The policy is there to prevent incompatible land uses, okay, incompatible development. That's one of the main reasons that we have a lot of our environmental laws and regulations. Applies to all activities within a designated airport clear zone, or APZ. The FAA policy promotes airport acquisition of rights or ownership of clear zone areas. Not all of them always are. Always remember that if they are planning on expanding in the future, you've got to count that in on your head. For example, I think Bush Intercontinental, I know, announced in, 2007 that they were expanding some of their runways. Whether they've actually at this point also expanded out how much that they've taken back into airport property, I don't know. But at one point, I believe they all owned all the property around and there was no issue with this. Now there's a question about Bush Intercontinental because I'm not sure if they actually have expanded that out. So that's still one that we look at. We still want to like see that on the map and how close they are and if they're within one of those clear zones. When we're looking at these clear zones, we're talking about specific distances. When you're looking for a civil airfield, you're talking about something that's within 2,500 feet from the end of that runway, okay? Not from the center or something else, from the end of the runway. Let me flip over because I know it'll show me some maps. Maybe it doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I took the maps out. Sorry about that. Basically, it's the little boxes kind of towards the end of the airfields there. The military ones extend out a little bit further. For military, what we're looking at is anything that's within 15,000 feet, not 15 miles, 15,000 feet of the end of that runway for a military airfield, because obviously they have more powerful planes that are going up and down. That's the location that's the most likely to actually have some type of incident. We had an incident a few years ago. That was very interesting. We had a few incidents a few years ago at Ellington Field. There was actually a military aircraft that had an unfortunate incident, shall we say, out at that airfield, either when it was landing or taking off, I don't know which one, and it had ordnance on board, so that could be kind of frightening. That's why we look at those kind of things. We don't want to put people in harm's way.
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we also?
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Wait. She's got to record you. Angel! No.
For the military airports, are we also looking at their outlying fields? Because those sometimes, typically will also have the clear zones and the APZs with them.
Yeah, we would look at any of the airfields that they've got in there. If it's a part of it, when you're saying outlying field, are you saying like?
Like in Corpus, they've got
They've got
Waldron,
3
they've
different
got
fields. Yeah.
Cabinets, they've got,
Yes.
well, even now they've got Goliad out there as well.
Yeah, we are looking for any and all that they're using for their purposes of that.
Okay.
Yeah, when it comes to military, it's all of those. As a matter of fact, I just had to do something with the one that's the Naval Air Station over on the edge there, because we were having to do something for one of the homeowners there, whether they were or were not within, and what we had to do to be able to help assist them in getting funding.
Okay.
So yeah, we look at every last one of those. So if it's split out to 3 different fields that they have there and they have outlying fields, we look at all of those. Any place that's going to have actual traffic. So, and again, for military, they don't have like a minimum emplanement. For civil, they do. So that's why when we looked back at Appendix A, we looked at the emplanements. If there's 2,500 or more, those are the airports that we're looking for a civil airport, a civil commercial airport, shall we say. So that's kind of the line in the sand that we draw. So if you're going back to your map and you're not sure if that is or isn't part of what you should be looking at, go back to Appendix A and it will give you the number of emplanements. You can they have an Excel sheet that you can sort by. But from looking at that for the state of Texas, literally what it showed us was there was nobody that was non-primary that was 2,500 or more. Everything else was a much smaller field, supposedly. It's according to their mapping, so we'll take it. Alrighty. The policy from HUD is to prevent incompatible development in areas around airports. Applies to all activities within a designated airport clear zone or APZ. FAA policy promotes airport acquisition of rights or ownership of clear zone areas. Type of projects that are covered under this go to construction, land development, community development, redevelopment, facilities or services to make land available for construction, and substantial rehab. And they say substantial rehab because you're extending the life of that building, okay, in an area that's incompatible. So that's why that falls under there. So the regulation itself prohibits the use of HUD funds for development of projects frequented by people involving new construction, major rehab, so they consider that to be anything that's 75% of replacement cost. An increase in density, so if you're expanding, so maybe you're making a fourplex out of a duplex, or you're adding another building that's going to house people. This goes in the 2500. Let's skip that. It's basically HUD's policy to discourage any kind of assistance in those areas. However, we do allow for down payment assistance, believe it or not, in those areas. When it's down payment assistance only and there's no construction associated with it, you're not doing rehabilitation, you're not doing new construction, what they do require is that you provide a notice to the homeowner. You'll get that notice signed, leave them a copy, and then you'll submit a copy of that notice with your environmental review to the appropriate agency. If you're doing down payment assistance through us, you'll be submitting that to us. To determine that, if you don't actually, if it appears that you're actually within that 2,500 feet or 15,000 feet of the airport, and you're within the clear zone clearly, I love that, what you can do is go back and ask the airport for their clear zone mapping, and they all have a set of these for the most part if they're doing more than 2,500 planes. Specifically, those primary airports will have a copy and mapping of that. If you can show through that mapping that you are not within those clear zones, then you're done. If you're working in the same area over and over and over again, that specific locality, I would go ahead and figure out who those airports are and go ahead and get a copy. That way you can just easily map that every time I go, see, we're way over here, we're way over here, we're not within the clear zone. You don't even have to worry about measuring at that point. So you've taken a map and you've plotted everybody that comes into your realm. But you're going to go ahead and map the homeowner so we can see where they are and that they don't fall within that zone. Yes, sir.
And also in the HUD Exchange, you can find, they have a diagram that gives you the criteria for how to, if you have a GIS team that can create the zones without having to do the research on it, it gives you the parameters for the width and not just the 15,000 feet length as well.
Nice.
So it's not a radius necessarily, it actually gives you a specific parameters that can use, and you can just build it into your mapping from there.
Oh, I love that. Now, I'm going to repeat this, although I think everybody heard it anyway, but I'm going to do this. Actually, I guess it's on the recording. That's the point of that little thing. Did everybody hear him? Could everybody hear him? What he was saying is on HUD Exchange, they actually have the process in there that explains to you how to adapt that and put that on your GIS mapping, and actually provides more than just like kind of the dot basis, but actually the parameters, the width and all that other stuff. Kind of a little more meat that goes with that as to what you're going to be plotting. So I would highly suggest going on to there. As a matter of fact, in a few minutes we'll actually go on to HUD Exchange and I can show you some of the places where you can get some of those additional pieces. They actually have a little section called View Resources. You click in there and it will actually go through element by element, and it has a lot of different information, links, documents that they can provide that will kind of provide a little bit more information. What we're looking for the ERR itself, yes ma'am?
Well, I was just going to say for the mapping part, for the military airports, that may not always be applicable because even the different branches, you can't just put one
Right.
parameter to determine like how they shape, because based on the different types of branches, they even have different configurations for them. So you just have to be more careful when you're working with the military branches, the military fields, but they should also have those mapped out and available.
Okay. Alrighty, so for what we're going to be looking for when we go out and monitor for the ERR, or for when you're actually submitting these in here for review and for clearance, we're going to be looking for a map. There's going to be a couple of different things that you could do. Depending upon where that airport is located, you can do a simple map that shows us from here to here. On the map itself, you're showing me where the location is of your project and where the location of the end of that zone is. If you're close to ABIA over here, and you want to show us that the length is coming out from at least 2,500 feet. I've done simple maps where you do a circumference around it, and what she was talking about is correct. I always bleed out a little bit more because the shape of what you're coming out from is not going to be on there, so you want to show us a little bit overage on that map. It's certainly from the middle of the airport, it's not going to be 2,500 feet. It's from the edges. So if you're doing something like that, putting a circle around it, add that additional piece in there as to what it's going out. That's one of the ways that you can do that. We'll talk about length to length is if you've got one airport nearby. One of the things I suggest is that MPIS map that shows you where all the airports are. I usually plot a spot on there so you can see what I'm closest to, and then I map the distance to whatever that closest airport is. And that one is just a really, let me pull it up right now. It's a really nothing kind of map. No, I'm not going into box, but thank you. So this is kind of what I was talking about. It's got like a narrative that starts with this piece. It's got Appendix A, which is falling up to here, where you can pull down the information about the airports, and Appendix B, which is actually the little mapping. The icons we're talking about are these. And this actually goes out to, I'm just going to grab any map rather than go down to Texas, but you can pull these up. Let me ask him if he'll rotate clockwise so we can look at it. Someday. Apparently he doesn't want to. Okay. As you can see on here on this map, it actually delineates. Oh, okay. Now it's going to turn. That's fine with me. As you're looking at the map, you can see up here where I was talking about the various icons that define the types of airports. Okay, so you've got large and medium hub, small non-hub. Those are the ones that we are now focusing on rather than all the other ones that come out on there. As you can see when you saw that big giant United States map as I scrolled past, there are a number of those. So this is shrinking down the ones that we do have to look at. But do make sure you pay attention to what is on that map. One of the things that I'll do, say my project is, okay, this is kind of a weird map to use, but say my project is right over here. So I'm going to map, I'll just stick a arrow pointing to that spot in there, say approximate project location, and now when we're looking at anything that has to do with distance, the only one that I'm worried about is whatever GST is. If I don't know what GST is, you can go on what's called AirNav and type in GST. It will tell you what the airport is, what its location is, and all the information on the airport, but you can kind of type that in. For that, then that tells me that's the only one that I'm going to actually be measuring towards, so I don't have to measure every single airport that's in that area. It's just kind of a shortcut. There's different ways that you can do it, just as long as you present to us that you've reviewed those. To me, it's just easier to go ahead and go to the closest one, and then that's only one map I'm producing. How did I get back here? Okay, sadly, we'll have to speed forward. It must be looking for the elves, I'm sure. And I'm kind of going quick on this one because this is probably one of the more simple ones. The big things to understand is the 2,500 feet and the 15,000 feet. Many times people get this one mixed up with noise. Noise requires you to look at airports that are within 15 miles of the locality. And again, that can go back to a noise contour to prove that out for you. And we'll get more into that as we get going into noise. If the project is located in one of those zones, you're going to go and, again, prove it out either with their clear zone map that they have, their APZ map, or if they don't have that kind of documents, you go to them and you get the airport operator to type something up for you. I know many times with the small airports what they've had to do is type it up for them, send it to them, and then they put it on their own letterhead and they sign off on it. Sometimes that's exactly what you're going to have to do. And remember the buyer notification if you're actually doing down payment assistance. Alrighty, coastal barriers. This is pretty simple. No. Okay. We don't put federal funds in coastal barriers. There's very few exceptions to that, which there's a very good reason why. We were literally just talking about some of the areas that we know that are in that zone. I'm stunned that I see people that want to live in there because there's nothing I find more bizarre than to stand there and be level with the ocean, okay, and then have an estuary right behind me that's level too. And it's not even high tide. You know that that's all going to disappear. Why would you go there? So anyway, federal regulations prohibit any kind of federal funds and projects in those coastal barriers. If you do have areas that are grandfathered in, don't forget. That little circle that's grandfathered in, that's where you're serving. Nothing outside of it. And you're not supposed to be building to create expansion. That's not the point of these. The whole point of that law is that they do not want expansion in these areas. So please keep that in mind as you're looking at some of these regions. All righty. These are some of the fish and wildlife mapping that you can go to. They've got actually a coastal barrier mapper that you can kind of apply to that. You can also get that through Google Earth. Some of the limitations and exceptions under the COBRA law are, you can consult with the Department of Interior and discuss it with them and see what they will work out with you. Again, part of that mitigation that we always talk about. The federal agency that is proposing the expenditure is responsible for providing in writing evidence that it meets one of the exceptions in Section 6 of COBRA, and if applicable, providing evidence that the project is consistent with the purposes of the COBRA. One of those things that will never be an exception will be housing, okay? Neither will it be something else that promotes development. So again, if you're looking at infrastructure, if it's promoting development, not so much. So again, keep that in mind, and we're done. For coastal barrier, for that mapping that you have out there, they do have the CBRA maps through Fish and Wildlife. All you have to do is drop in the address and it pulls it up. Or if you're lucky enough and in an area such as Houston, they were able to map out their entire outline of their city along that mapping piece that's in there, and there's the coastal barrier. It's clearly marked and labeled. They're done. They're not in the coastal barrier. Flood insurance. The purchase of flood insurance is mandatory for properties assisted with HUD funds and that are located in a special flood hazard area. So if you're in a 100-year floodplain, you will be required to purchase flood insurance. What that level will be, yes, sir?
Sorry, so that's like preliminary and effective?
I'm sorry, say again? That won't help me hear you, but we'll record you.
If someone is in the preliminary special flood hazard area, but their effective is a zone X, does the flood insurance still apply?
Okay. She was asking if the person is located currently, if their effective map right now says that they're in the zone X, but the preliminary map says they're going into the 100-year floodplain, she wanted to know if they have to purchase flood insurance. They're going to have to purchase flood insurance. It's going to be based on, let me explain how this works. If you're in zone X and you go ahead and purchase the flood insurance, it's a lower cost for the moment. They've gone to actuarial rates now. And what's going to happen is they get a delay in how that rate rises. For everybody else that didn't already have flood insurance, it's going to immediately go to that high rate, okay? So eventually they're going to be going there one way or the other. It really doesn't matter if it's preliminary or effective. One way hits it or the other. And the moment that it becomes effective, then they're required to have flood insurance. So they might as well do it. The one bite rule. One bite rule for HUD means that you cannot provide federal disaster assistance for persons' properties for construction activities where the person previously received federal assistance. So, for instance, Hurricane Rita hit, all these people were devastated, we rebuilt many of the homes, and then here comes Ike right after that. If your home was repaired and was damaged in Ike, and you had federal assistance through Hurricane Rita, and you didn't keep the insurance, or you decided, we showed the binder you were going to get it, but you didn't actually implement it, and you didn't buy it, and you didn't maintain it, you're not eligible for assistance for the damage that occurred in Ike. Okay? That's just all there is to it. We're providing federal assistance, and again, from the beginning, I said this is a federal investment, and these are tax dollars. So we're trying to be very keen about this. They're also trying to look at places that have multiple issues over and over again to see if that's not some areas that may be eligible for funding through FEMA, where they do kind of buyout rules with that. I'm going to keep going. Laws and authorities. We're going to jump into the next piece here. So basically flood insurance, yes. Historic preservation, floodplain and wetlands, coastal zone, aquifers, endangered species, the whole host is what we're about to jump into. Some of these I'm going to just touch on to, again, just like we've kind of done through here, and some we're kind of drill into. Air quality. Air quality, actually, we have a PA for air quality thanks to Kelly, but I'm going to jump into little pieces of this to begin with. There are certain ambient air standards that are required. I'm not going to go into every last one of them. But the generally concerned only with projects that required an EA or an EIS. That doesn't mean necessarily just because yours is CAT X that it doesn't apply, but generally. The types of activities that would not likely contribute to non-attainment are going to be single-family housing projects with 5 or fewer dwelling units, housing rehab, playground improvements. They tell you to do things like focus on what's going to increase traffic or increase consumption of energy. Those are the things that you're going to really be thinking about that may impact those areas that are considered non-attainment. Federal projects have to conform with the Clean Air Act. If your project does not involve new construction or conversion of land use, it can be assumed that the emissions are going to be de minimis, okay? And you can point back to that. Again, that also goes into the project description, okay, where you explain to us with a little more detail what exactly you're doing, so you can point back and say, based on this, it will be de minimis for the types of projects and what we're doing. So what are you going to do when you have air quality? You're going to determine whether the project is located in a non-attainment area, okay? You can go on TCQ's website. They actually have a piece in there that you can drill down into your area, and it will show you the areas of the state. Please don't use a super old map that's from like 2004. We'll see it on the bottom, and those are old, and they've been updated since then. And we'll go on to TCQ ourselves and compare you to see if you're in there. So go ahead and get the latest map. Go ahead and pull it up and make sure that they haven't updated it. There are certain things that you can, sorry, my brain's not quite working after lunch. Currently designated non-attainment areas for all criteria pollutants are mapped out. This was actually, I think 2012 was the last time I saw an update. And this is kind of a piece from EPA that kind of walks you through what exactly they're doing. If it's not in a non-attainment area, the project is in compliance. Simple as that. So if you can pull up that map, either screenshot it and PDF that, or pull out the documents that show the other thing, and always put the location of your project. Don't just print that map. Go back in and put a little dot and an arrow that says approximate location. Everything's always knowing about where it's located on that map. Don't make us guess, and don't make the auditors guess. So if you actually are in a non-attainment area, you're going to need to obtain a letter of consistency with the state implementation plan. So you're going to be submitting a letter to TCEQ. They're the ones that are governing that piece. Permitting and compliance actions may be required in order to confirm with the SIP. So far, we haven't had too many of those, but some of our projects are going to be getting larger now. You're going to mitigate for those impacts. I'm not going to go into all the pieces where they mitigate, because we have an agreement. We have a brand new HUD agreement with TCEQ Air Quality. This is fairly fresh off the presses there. Within your box, you got an example page that tells you the type of projects that can be covered under this. This agreement applies solely to ozone, okay? So when you're looking at that and it says they're in non-attainment, a lot of the times they'll tell you that it's non-attainment for an 8-hour, whatever. Air quality something, which never makes sense to me because I'm not a chemical person. Based on the federal general conformity regulations and EPA guidance to determine an action exempt from general conformity, this is what it's going to be based on. There are 4 areas in Texas that are non-attainment or maintenance based on that 8-hour ozone. Okay, so this particular agreement is going to apply to those areas and assist you. As of September 23rd, 2019, DFW, Houston, Galveston, Brazoria were categorized as serious for 8-hour ozone, and you still are going to be able to utilize this as your cheat sheet to the level of types of projects. But this is what they base things off, the worst case scenario. That's where they could get this. TCEQ reviewed historical projects determined by Region 6 as categorically similar to HUD-funded projects and determined they were de minimis. They worked very hard putting together this listing. If you actually look at the document itself rather than just the cheat sheet that Kelly provided us, you'll see they had to submit specific projects with all kinds of details. These projects were required to have adequate emission analysis documentation. So they actually were projects out there that had those types of analysis. Generally, we're not seeing a whole lot of those when we're doing the CDBG stuff or home stuff. So based on those, the determination for the HUD-funded projects that we've provided, and we've got the examples right here, it applies to projects that are similar to those that are identified in the Attachment A in size and scope. Attachment A was to that actual document, and this is kind of what she's created to kind of give you drilled down so you're not hunting through all that. And it's applied to smaller projects in size and scope. So if it's something that's very similar to what they've proposed and shown you and it's already been modeled, or if it's something smaller than that, but it's under that same category, that's what they're talking about. That's how you're going to apply this. It applies to projects that fall within the categories listed in Attachment A and that qualify as categorically excluded, subject to 58.5. So we're looking at CADX projects. If you peek in here, and I'll just kind of read off a few of these pieces, we're looking at water and wastewater improvements, flood and drainage improvements, street improvements, public facilities, and housing. So subbed underneath here, Las Vegas. Installation of a new well, water tank, pump, shutoff valves, connection piping, and other essential system components. Now that's the short version of what they actually put together and have in that thing. So you can pull up the actual piece, and we'll drop that down on Box. I don't think I dropped that on Box. But we actually have a link over that to the Hub website. And you can look at what the actual projects were and kind of compare and contrast. The agreement is valid through September 23rd, 2021. So we've got a few years that we can actually utilize this. If you have any questions about size and scope, you're going to contact HUD directly. She's provided her email address and her phone number. You can reach her at either one. I would always encourage email because that's just me, because then you have something in writing. However, she may also pick up the phone and give you a call to get more information, and you guys work that out, but get your response in writing. Alrighty, Coastal Zone Management. Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972. The whole purpose is to preserve those areas that are along the coastlines and the estuaries. CZMA and HUD. All federal actions which directly affect a coastal zone must be consistent with the approved state coastal zone management plan. Every state that falls along the coastline has one of these. For management and compliance, if your project is designated in a coastal zone, which again, there's mapping that you can both pull up off the General Land Office's website, or they actually have a layer that you can pull off of there to drop on to Google Earth, which is one of the simplest ways to drill down to see if you are or you aren't. Do you have to contact them or don't you? The types of projects that we're looking at generally involve new construction, conversion of land use, major rehab, or substantial improvements, acquisition of undeveloped land. If so, is the project consistent with that state's plan? The consistency determinations, a federal agency may deviate from full consistency with an approved management program when such deviation is justified because of an emergency or other similar unforeseen circumstances. I'm telling you that because they have actually created consistency determinations for you that you can utilize, and it's a programmatic agreement that they've put together, the General Land Office with HUD. The CZMA consistency determinations for HUD are for CDBG-DR projects only. So don't go over to TDA and try to use it for your CDBG projects over there, or to home and try to use it for your home projects over there. This is for CDBG-DR only. The GLO provided guidance for projects deemed minor in scope with likely insignificant or de minimis effects. The agreement is valid for 2 years. So it's going from October 15th, 2018 through October 15th, 2020. So use it now while you can. Yeah. She says it's going to be renewed. I don't know. Will it or won't it? I think they should do it now. During the 2-year period, tracking and reporting is required, FYI. So every 6 months we need, if you're going to utilize this, to submit to GLO the following. The report should include the project category per the agreement, the county that it's happening in, and a short summary of what the project is, 1 or 2 lines. Just to kind of, I have the cheat sheet here, and it was actually in Box, so you should have a copy drop down to your laptop. If you flip in here, it's giving you the types and styles of projects, and it's listing them out by category. So you can go in here and figure out which one you're looking at. When they're talking about reporting, what they're asking you is, okay, the type of project I'm doing falls under, here, number 2, water, wastewater improvements that do not increase capacity during, and then it's got a list subbing to that. So you're going to let us know that you did 2C, culvert replacement, okay, if that's what it falls under. And you'll mark that out, you'll provide the county that it happened in, and the locality, it'd be nice to have a project location, and the short summary, okay? 1 or 2 pages, 1 or 2 lines of what exactly it was that you did. Not a big giant thing, but you need to keep track of that. So make yourself a little Excel sheet if you're gonna use that piece as you're going along for the different projects. And again, that needs to come to us every 6 months. So, just a quick review back into this. Again, I'm sorry. This is actually the piece I was talking about. This is actually where you're going to turn into coastal consistency. If you can't actually use the PA, if your project's outside of what's listed in here, you need to actually have to go through coastal consistency, okay? Your submission is going to happen right here. I've given you a link right here. Some of the other mapping that's available is down here. So for your document compliance, and I apologize, I stayed up till like 3:30 editing these things, so, and I mean AM, so I'm having to remember what I put in there. If the project is not within the coastal zone, include the appropriate state coastal zone map with the project location, always the project location, indicated on the map showing it outside the area of concern. If the project is within the area of concern for coastal zones, request for state review or permit, mitigation measures, and/or project conditions. Bring it.
So just one thing to add for coastal consistency determinations. I spoke yesterday with Allison, who is with our Coastal Protection Division and is responsible for the consistency determinations. And I guess they have been getting some submissions for projects that would typically qualify for use under this agreement. And just given the volume of projects that we're doing in the coastal zone, she wanted us to remind everybody at the training that this is available for use. It's encouraged because we've had it internally approved, and we've already hashed out the mitigation and what allowable activities are and aren't. So please use it if at all possible for your project. And if you do need to submit for consistency determination to coastal, the link Cynthia provided up there, I haven't looked at it. So I'm not sure if it's the updated version, but rather than mailing in a paper hard copy, they're asking that you email it in. So I'm not sure if that link is up to date or not, but
it's from last year. It should be.
It should be, yeah. So if in the event that you do need to submit for a consistency agreement, please email rather than sending in hard copies. And hopefully it's very few and far between that you actually have to do that.
Here, let's hit it right now and see if it works. And we're on line 1 up. There you go.
Does it have our email?
Download forms. So that's where you're submitting. I don't see the submission. Yeah.
Yes, maybe it's on there. Statement. Coastal boundary. Is it at the bottom? So it's basically just we will provide an updated, maybe the agreement with actually at the bottom of the agreement, her link might be on there. Anyway, we'll double check and update it on Box so that everybody has an access to it. But I think it's just an email address that's coastalconsistency@czma.texas.gov or something real generic. Nobody's named specifically, but it goes to 2 people that work the entire coastal zone that do the determination. So we'll update whatever's on Box so you guys have that link in the event that you need to do
And
it.
we've got your emails actually. So when you registered, we captured your email, and that's how you got the notifications to join Skype or, attend, and also to download all the information that you got from Box. So we can just send a blast email to send you the link. Alrighty, let me escape this. Okay, let's put this in there. Happy it didn't do anything. So for your document compliance, one of the things as you go down that checklist, you're going to be talking to us specifically about the fact that you're utilizing that PA, and you're going to let us know where it falls in that PA, okay? And remember, you point back to your project description because that's going to link it back up to where you chose under the PA itself. You guys look cold. I'm cold too. You may, and again, it may require a review or a permit, but at that time, that's when you're going to can't talk. you're going to actually submit for coastal consistency. They're pretty good about getting back to you. Mitigation measures and/or project conditions may be required with that, depending upon what the project is that you're doing. Alrighty, contamination. And you know what? I know you guys just got back, but it's always that thing like an hour after you get back from lunch that I think everybody needs a bathroom break. So why don't we take like 10 minutes and come back at 20 till?